Councilor Driscoll, if you're ready to begin.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for attending. This is Councilor Joe Driscoll. I advanced this legislation in coordination with the administration, and just want to start this meeting by saying this was, it's surprising something like DEER would take so much partnership, but at the table, we needed to have our partners at the council, cooperation from our fellow councilors, from the mayor and his administration, the whole team, the county and the state and the federal government as well. So, we had all branches of government at the table to deal with this problem of DEER in Syracuse, and it's been great to see such partnership. So we implemented this plan last year, and I'll just announce. Should I announce everyone who's here, Greg? Say people who are with us.
If you'd like to, Councilor, sure. It's a long list and growing on the participants today.
Yeah, I see Travis Glazier with the county, Julie Lefebvre, our Commissioner of Parks, who's worked with us. So any questions that the councilors have, we're going to try to get to you. I see Chief Schaaf with the police department, Tom Quinn, who is part of the citizen-led advisory group that we had. Is Christine Ferraro's there, I see, with Cornell Cooperative Extension, who've been great. Ken Garno, who was also part of the group. Is Justin on as well? I don't see him yet.
Yes, he's there.
Okay, great. And we have Justin with the USDA, yeah. So this has been a project we've been working on for a long time, trying to get this going. And also, of course, thanks to my predecessor, Councilor Nader Maroon, who's pushed this forward. I picked up a ball that was already many yards down the field when we started working on this. So I want to thank him for developing the framework and pushing this forward, and all the work he did, and Assemblywoman Hunter, who's been great on this as well. So this has been a huge project with a lot of people involved, just to say that. And I'll try to move on to the meat and potatoes now. So we implemented this DEER and tick management plan last year. And today we're here to just get an update, get some metrics, see how the program has been implemented, what successes we've had, what challenges we've had, and to just field any questions from the counselors. I know a lot of constituents have reached out to me about this, so hopefully I will relay some of those questions that I got from constituents, and hopefully we'll cover all that. So I think that being said, unless if anyone else has anything I'm missing, please chime in. If not, I will pass it to Greg Lowe, who has a presentation for us to get us up to speed about where the project is at this place.
Thank you, Councilor Driscoll, and thank you to all the members of the council for being here today, and to Auditor Maroon for joining. This has been a long process that Mayor Walsh and the administration has picked up on and move forward in a really effective partnership. I also want to recognize one other attendee on the call today, and a critical part of the process. The Department of Environmental Conservation is on. Courtney Lemire is here as well. So we do have representatives of the regulatory agencies and partners that have enabled this project to move forward. I'm going to provide a little bit of background and reminder of how we got to where we are briefly, and then move into the results and recommendations on next steps. The city is one of multiple municipalities, as I think the folks on this call know, in Onondaga County, that has been experiencing the impact of the growing overpopulation of deer. And Mayor Walsh in 2019, middle of last year, appointed a tick and deer management advisory group, a citizens group, to look at this issue and make recommendations to the city. And so in response to that group's work, which included the development of a comprehensive tick and deer management plan for the city, we began a deer damage management program in certain parts of the city last winter. The purpose of and I say part of the program because deer management is only one element of the recommendations in the integrated plan that was presented to the Common Council and approved by the Common Council. So today we're talking about deer management. We'll also reference during the discussion some of the other elements of the tick and deer management plan. The purpose of the deer management program is to address the impact of the overpopulation of white-tailed deer in the city, which by multiples exceeds the ideal or optimum balance in the ecosystem. And so we face significant numbers of deer motor vehicle accidents, damage to the ecosystem, to parks, to gardens, and the public health risk related to Lyme disease is significant, and the deer population has an impact on the spread of Lyme disease. Again, this is part of an integrated program that also includes, importantly, public education, which we'll touch on. The description of the work that occurred for deer management is generally as follows. The city identified sites on the east, west, and south sides of the city, which is where the primary concerns have been seen for the deer population. The locations that were identified for deer damage management, for deer management, meet very strict, clear criteria set by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. And so the city operated on large, private, and city-owned properties that were closed to public access when the work was conducted. Any of those sites that were not city property required explicit written permission from the property owners for that work to occur. And all of those sites were at least 500 feet away from any occupied dwelling. The program is funded, we should note, by Onondaga County, which reimburses the city for the work that we contract for in deer management. And the program is approved by the sites specifically are approved by DEC before the work begins. Deer management was conducted by trained, experienced wildlife managers from the United States Department of Agriculture, the USDA. They have experience in this kind of work, both in our community and across the United States. Importantly, all of the work was conducted in coordination with the Syracuse Police Department, which was aware of the work that was going on during any of the program happening. The city issued public notice before and during the program that we notified citywide that this work was going on. I would note that based on experience in other communities, the city does not explicitly identify the specific sites that work occurs. That has proven to draw more public presence and increase or decrease public safety. And so we place significant citywide notice of the program and the quadrants in which it's happening. And the work happens at night, as noted, at times when these sites are not open to public access. Let me give you a summary of the results now of the work that was completed. This happened in December, January, February, and a good part of March. The program was suspended a couple of weeks early due to the COVID-19 pandemic and restrictions on gatherings and work that was not deemed to be essential. It was 20 nights of work during that time period. There were 159 deer removed in total. The average is about 8 per night. That's about 4,000 pounds of venison, which were prepared and delivered for donation, equating to about 16,250 meals for people in need in the local community. From a geographic standpoint, the map on the screen, which I hope you're at screens that can allow you to see it, I'll tell you what it says in case you're on a handheld and can't see it. In the southeast quadrant, 79 deer were removed. In the southwest quadrant, so moving almost directly west, it was 47 deer. And in the northwest, which covers the very close in proximity to the border with obviously the southwest quadrant, and there are a few sites in the northern part of or there are not sites in the northern part of the quadrant. It's more in the middle part of the western area, 33. There were no sites identified in the northeast quadrant based on deer population and the identification of the areas in greatest need of attention first. So 79 in the southeast, 47 in the southwest, 33 in the northwest. Just continuing on some of the results and information that's important to share, there was some intentional and unintentional interference with the baiting activities that occurs as part of the program. That is not unusual for programs like this, and there was nothing out of the what is considered to be the norm. The project was completed within the authorized budget for this year's work. The council will, in the weeks and meetings ahead, be asked to review the final documents for transfer for reimbursement with the county. And also in the public education standpoint, even though there was some disruption due to the pandemic, there were public education meetings conducted during the same time period. There were 8 programs. We had more than 300 participants. That work needs to continue. This addresses tick-borne illness prevention and also shares information on ways in which citizens and ways in which people can manage the environment to reduce the presence of deer or the harm that deer can create to the ecosystem. In its report to the city, its summary report to the city, the USDA made recommendations in 3 primary areas. First is that the city consider additional properties added to the program. The USDA has not recommended specific areas for that yet, and that is a process that we very much want to see citizen involvement, citizen participation in that identification. But there are clearly, based on our first year effort, some areas in the city that are gaps in where the sites are able to cover, and that is something we need to work on. USDA suggested that in areas where there is a higher deer density, deer population, and the use of shooting as a means of addressing is not feasible, that live trapping is an option that happens in some other communities and something that could be considered in Syracuse. Our advisory group has looked at that in the past, and I think based on this recommendation, I suspect would look at it again for consideration by the city and by the council. And that the city undertake tracking of deer damage data that would enable it to monitor some of the outcome of this effort that looks things like deer vehicle accidents, complaints, carcasses removed. Based on this first year experience and the recommendations from the USDA, the administration is recommending the following next steps. First, to reconvene the tick and deer management advisory group that worked on the original plan. And members of that group have indicated to us, at least initially, that they are willing to serve again in an advisory capacity. That group can look at ways to address some of the gaps, look at the tracking performance and make sure those systems are in place, and come back to the council with recommendations for going forward. There needs to be continued additional public outreach. Today's information and sharing with the council should be seen as only a first step of what needs to happen going forward to share the results of this program and to continue to get public input on the process. This work is a long-term process for the impact to be felt, and it is essential, based on experience in other communities, that the public continue to have involvement and participation. There also needs to continue to be tick-borne illness prevention, public outreach, as well as ways to manage the environment. The implementation of those tracking steps will be important. Tick density is an important indicator. This is obviously not only about deer. Some of the efforts to conduct tick density tracking, tick drags, have been a little bit disrupted by the conditions that we faced, but need to be resumed and monitored. And that the Tick and Deer Management Action Plan is updated, reviewed with the council later this summer or early fall, so that the council and the mayor have the ability to make the determination on maintaining the program in 2020 and 2021. And Councilor and the rest of the councilors on the call, that's the summary of the presentation that I wanted to provide as background today. As Councilor Driscoll noted, we do have other members of the group that has worked on this project over the past year, including representatives of the state, the USDA, Onondaga County, Cornell Cooperative Extension, and members of the advisory group. And so if there's a question that I need to reach out to a team member, I'm glad to do that. I put the results slide back up again as a summary.
Greg, can
I'll open the floor to my fellow councilors. Who was that? Councilor Green?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll have Councilor Green. Go ahead.
So do we have a sense of how many deer remain after this year? And then how does that compare to what we consider to be a healthy population?
An actual count of the deer is not a number that, to my knowledge, exists in the city or in the other municipalities. As I finish to answer your question, Councilor, I'll note that Travis Glazier of the county is on, and if he can add any information to help answer this question, I'll ask him to. We did not, at the start of this season, Councilor, target a specific number, identify a specific goal number that we would be able to remove this year. But because you don't know in the first year's experience what is going to happen. Now we do have an experience to track and target year in, year out. The experience in other communities has been that that number will likely begin to become a little smaller each year, which is a good thing, right? We expect that to happen. We do know by a factor of, Councilor, well more than double, perhaps a member of the team can recall, multiples of the optimum deer population exist in the city today, many multiples. Travis, is there anything you'd add about deer population or another member of the team that might fill out my answer a little more?
Well, Greg, I'll jump in. This is Nader. I think Travis, he isn't there yet. So in terms of the numbers, Councilor Green, Professor Underwood from ESF had undertaken a study that was authorized by the state. We were given money to do some of the counts. So his study has not been publicly provided at this point in time, even though it's been a few years now. He was waiting and waiting for peer review. So I can follow up with him to get that and see if that information is available to share with you based on the counting that was done a few years ago. The other, and the density was pretty concentrated in the east side, southeast, as Greg has pointed out. What was done in the way of culling between the northwest sector and the southwest sector equals what was done in the southeast. And that's where the heaviest concentration of deer population in the city appears to be, it has been in the past. In addition to which, the multiplication, if you will, of fawns being born and the deer population growing exponentially. And I'm sure Justin can add to this, or Christina or Courtney. It continues to be significant. You know where I live, and just this past week, I had 3 fawns literally born in my neighbor's backyard adjacent to mine, and then they moved to my backyard. So it just, the population just continues to grow exponentially. That's the problem. And as Greg aptly pointed out, this is a long-term commitment that's needed to be able to manage, and the operative word is manage, the deer population. And also in Professor Underwood's study, and maybe Courtney or Christina can tell us this, there is, based on an urban population, what the density should be per square mile. I've forgotten the number, to be honest with you. So
Should be about 10 per square mile is what they say is the healthy urban.
Yeah. Nate, can you guys hear me now? This is Travis Glazier from the county.
We hear you, Travis.
Oh, great. All right. I was, for whatever reason, on the phone. I tried talking. So just to give you some information about the other communities and the numbers there. So the estimates are all based on observations and information's extrapolated. So a true count would be like a flyover during the winter where you can actually spot via helicopter, and that hasn't happened anywhere in any of the communities locally. So what you have is essentially a spotting of deer and then an assumption on their travel, and then you extrapolate that number. That process is very imprecise. It's the kind of best of what's available, but to give you some context, Fayetteville was considered, I believe, to have about an 80 to 90 deer per square mile. The village of Fayetteville is roughly 1 square mile. And since they've begun their culling, they've taken, I believe, over 300 deer. So, you know, whether or not those are deer that are traveling from other areas, whether they were truly located there, whether it was repopulation, the estimate number, the population estimates are very difficult to really get our arms around. And what we can say is that it's very safe to say that the populations are far beyond optimal. And so decreasing the population on the whole has a net benefit. And as I mentioned, in Fayetteville, it's been 300 over, I believe, 4 years. They've been, this will be their 4th year, and they'll probably be closer to 350 by the end of this year. And the original estimate was about 90. So just to give you some context.
Yeah, so I guess and that's great, and I know it's really hard, you know, to do an estimate like that. It's all challenging. But I guess, you know, if we were to talk to constituents, you know, 159 sounds like a lot. I'm just trying to understand, does that just kind of level us off so that the deer population doesn't increase? Is this put us on pace to get a healthy deer population in 5 years, in 10 years? I guess that's the kind of rough estimate. I just don't really have an understanding of what this means in the overall picture.
Councilor, we should expect multiple years. The advisory group has told us to anticipate that to get somewhere closer to a more optimum number will be at least 4 years, as I recall, as a likely range of continued effort, and then perhaps a maintenance effort ongoing.
This is Justin from USDA. Just also, you know, we can recommend that everybody looks at your damage, right? It's what's accessible to your community. And that's why we made the recommendation to track some of your damages. Every community may have a different threshold, And that will, be set by your community, what that threshold is, and what's the acceptable deer level when you reach that acceptable level of damage. So sometimes it's not as good to focus on the number of deer because can actually spend a lot of money trying to come up with those numbers instead of putting it toward management. And just let your community kind of tell you what's acceptable. When they're not seeing the damage anymore, you're kind of in the right spot and turn over to more of a maintenance phase.
Councilor Driscoll, I was wondering if I could ask a question.
The Honorable Patrick Hogan. Yes, sir.
Greg, is there, as far as priorities go, as this program goes forward, is it predicated on the impact of the deer on the neighborhoods as much as the population? Because my concerns in my particular council district revolve around deer colliding with vehicles, especially a real dangerous stretch of Avery and Velasco Road. In fact, the other night, I was walking my dog around Tipperary Hill, and a deer galloped down Tompkins. I don't know if looking to see if Coleman's was open or not, but it went right past me. And I mean, is that a priority? I mean, population, of course, thinning the population is important, but I think we got to be cognizant of, and I imagine you are cognizant of the roads that are affected and how the neighborhood's impacted.
It's very much so. I think if I answer your question, if I understand your question correctly, we see three primary priorities that are addressed through the deer management portion. Deer motor vehicle accidents are very important, and a number, by the way, Councilor, that we can do a better job tracking going forward and will. Two, we know about the ecosystem impact, and that affects both city property and private property. And the third is the role that deer play in transporting tick, in transporting a tick-borne illness. So all three of them are important to us, but the deer motor vehicle issue is a great concern.
Okay.
Driscoll, can I ask a question?
Yes, Councilor Majuk, please.
So my question is, how do you determine a specific location within a quadrant as to where to go, basically, within a quadrant?
Councilor, it's a very good question. It begins with a mapping exercise that we're able to identify those properties that are large enough to meet the very stringent criteria that the DEC sets for communities. That setback of at least 500 feet in all directions from any occupied dwelling. At that point, working with the USDA team, there is actual site visits that occur to determine if in those areas there are sites that meet other geographic criteria. The presence of a hillside, which can be helpful as a backdrop. Other issues, citing considerations, and then, Councilor, a process of engagement if the property is not the city's property, a process of engagement with private property holders in those areas. And that process will resume again now. So I'll finish the point and say that process will pick up again now after this first year's experience.
Okay, I'm asking that because here in the 3rd district, especially in the Elmwood and in Winkworth area, I can literally go out here right now and just show you the deers are wandering right here in my backyard.
Yes, sir.
So I'm asking that, when you decide which area to go in the quadrant, I'm really recommending that you guys look at the Elmwood area and the Winkworth. And it's that I'm not the only one who's raising this point. I'm sure Julie have heard the same, recommendation from these areas. I'm sure, Valley as well is experiencing the same thing, but
there's a very significantly impacted western part of our quadrants. That even that map I showed, Counselor, of the Northwest and Southwest, in some regards, you could look at those two quadrants together and see that really the Southeast and the West were about equal. And given the distribution of what we know about the deer population, the Northwest and Southwest quadrants where the work is conducted are very close together. But we need to continue to work there, and we will. We made some progress, but it's going to be a multi-year effort.
Councilor Driscoll.
I'm sorry. Is the second round going to kick off around summertime, or is it going to take it to winter?
It will be conducted in winter. The ideal time period based on the experience of the USDA is that December, January, February, March time period, Counselor. So what we will do now is we will use the time that we have in the summer months to gain further public input. Listen to, for example, to feedback like yours about concerns about the Southwest quadrant and what you hear from constituents. And look at others and identify sites, go through the process of confirming those sites. They all require permitting, and then we're prepared in the early winter for the work that would be done in that roughly 4-month period.
Is that, are you good there, Councilor Majuk? Any other questions? Good. Auditor Maroon, did you have a question?
I do. I have a couple, if I may. And just as a matter of explanation to Councilor Majuk, too, part of the problem, Councilor, in the Winkworth area is that it's borderlines with the town of Onondaga. And the town of Onondaga supervisor has been adamantly against any culling in the town of Onondaga. And much like on the east side, where we get a lot of, in the city, we get a lot of deer traffic, as Greg pointed out before, they have travel patterns. A lot of it came from DeWitt, town of DeWitt, and the town of DeWitt has been actively culling since Fayetteville started, then the town of DeWitt, and now the city. So my question is, there's two actually. So one of the things, and I want to do a shout out to Christina because I know she's worked on the tick management component of this through Cornell Cooperative. And so I'd like to hear a little bit more about what the plan would be for that. And ancillary to that is years ago when I got involved with this, I had gone to the health department at the county to find out, and maybe Travis can update us, on any record keeping that's going on from the health department, both from the county and from the state in terms of Lyme disease and the accuracy of that. And Travis, also, if you can update us, are you getting the information for the task force on the data collected from the town of DeWitt, from the village of Fayetteville, and from the city relative to numbers?
Good morning, everybody. It's nice to see everybody this morning. I'll go first to answer your question, Auditor Maroon. The education, the public outreach for bite prevention education went through the winter and was fairly well attended with one-on-one education in senior centers. We had great cooperation from the Parks Department and scheduling us into many community centers in the city so we could deliver to constituents directly. And we also honored requests to be guest speakers, like speakers bureau type speakers at a lot of smaller local clubs and groups in the city. We were a bit disrupted. We had a very large event planned for the end of April to sort of usher in the springtime education and awareness season that I was planning to model on a hugely successful event that DeWitt hosted right before everything went on pause. So that was a 2-hour event with extensions, integrated pest management presentation, and then we had 3 great guest speakers. Dr. Thangamani from the Upstate Lab and Dr. Paolino from Upstate Community General, who is an infectious disease specialist and has a lot of Lyme patients, and also Dr. Brian, who's an epidemiologist and studies the expansion of tick-borne illness in various places in the United States, including Lyme disease. That was a very well-attended event. I'd like to bring that to Syracuse, and I'm looking forward to discussing with the administration how we can do that in a safe way. Also exploring ways that we can produce some more robust tick population monitoring to help inform our decision-making on this for this advisory group.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Christina, I just wanted to make you aware. I don't know if you've heard about it yet, but they've started a CNY area advocacy group for Lyme disease with Ann Messenger and a lot of other folks that are trying to raise awareness and action around Lyme disease. I don't know if you've worked with that group yet, but I'm sure they'd be happy to partner up and help, promote and get people to attend an event like that.
Yes, we are. CCE Onondaga is in touch with them, and we're looking for ways that our work can complement each other and ways that we can collaborate.
Great.
Nader, just to kind of cover your 2 questions regarding the county. So the instances of Lyme disease are reported to the state, and then the information is put together on a county by county basis and distributed. Just as an anecdotal kind of side story, a lot of the communities, which, because Lyme really worked its way from east to west. A lot of the communities which are older within the kind of Lyme disease sphere, their instances of reported Lyme disease go way up, and then they drop right off. And what ends up happening is it becomes endemic in the community, and physicians stop reporting it because it's just kind of assumed that everybody, it's so frequent, and so the reporting drops off. It's an issue they had in downstate, so the reporting itself is a little sketchy at times. We try our best to keep track of it, but at the same time, with our tick population showing at over 50% rate of having Lyme disease within them, the county's position is largely people understanding personal protective measures, driving down tick density, and trying to address this issue, because with that many, that frequency of Lyme disease within ticks themselves, it's really most important that we focus on decreasing tick density and helping people understand personal protective measures that they can take when they go out into the wilderness, whether it's using the sprays and things of that nature, dealing with things in their yard to prevent that. The second question you had about reporting numbers back to the committee, yeah, all the other communities which have performed their management practices over the winter haven't reported their numbers. So once I have all that information together, I'll be reporting that back to the community. And Darcy and I need to circle back, Darcy at the county legislature, about when our next meeting will be, but they kind of trickle in on their own. And I haven't in the past chased them down. The city was pretty proactive. Greg got this information to me. So they're the first, you guys are the first ones in. But as soon as I have all the information, I'll definitely report it. And I've started to put it together because we're at like a 5-year period, really trying to monitor on a 5-year period what the outlay is financially, as well as what the results are, to try and get a countywide perspective a little clearer.
I appreciate that from both of you. And one of the reasons I ask in terms of the data collection, because as you know, in the task force that I'm one of 5, I guess, of us, I've been raising that issue all along of the importance of that, because it, first of all, it gives a historical perspective that I think most counties should do. Secondarily, it's important for the I think it is based in, Greg had said that the city is reimbursed from the county to undertake this. So it's important that we constantly keep the legislators, the county legislators, appraised of the activity within the county and the work that is being done. And there's a lot of people, as Councilor Driscoll mentioned at the outset, and as Greg has mentioned, and as most of us know, people like Christina and Courtney and Justin and everybody from the village of Fayetteville, there's been a groundswell of people over the past 10, 11 years, 12 years now that have really pushed this forward. And we don't want to lose our enthusiasm of it. And everything that I had read about this, the commitment to management of both the tick and deer takes 5 to 10 years of commitment. And so the work that's been done and is continued to done, make sure that we're reporting it and that the legislators understand it and continue to fund it, because without that, it won't happen.
Great, thank you, Auditor Maroon. Appreciate that. And any other, was that your questions, Auditor?
Yes.
Do any other, I don't know if there's any other fellow counselors on. Does anybody else have any questions? I have a few if nobody else is chomping at the bit.
Yeah, I actually have a question about the Northeast Quadrant.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilor.
So for my district, I mean, what's the plan going forward for that? Because I know we didn't really go in there, but again, you know, I got a lot of calls and I've seen, and I know Greg, you know, we live in the same neighborhood, so you and I have talked about seeing deer in the neighborhood. I guess what's the plan going forward for the Northeast Quadrant? Because that's, again, it's the area that I represent, and it really didn't get a whole lot of attention, and we're starting to see more of a problem now this past spring and going into the summer.
Councilor, the administration will ask the advisory group to pay specific attention to the Northeast Quadrant in its recommendations. We'll also work with USDA on that area specifically, because yours is not the only feedback that we've received regarding what appears to at least be a continued, if not a growing, presence of deer in the Northeast Quadrant. And so we will have recommendations regarding that quadrant in our proposal going forward.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Greg, my questions were, what responses can we give to constituents, you know, one for like Councilor Carney, where we're not hitting their area, but also constituents that are within the Southeast, even the areas that were hit well, that are saying they're not seeing any marked improvement. I know we can't give away specific locations, but you and I spoke about, for example, you know, I've heard from some people near St. Mary's Cemetery in the DeWitt Road area that said they haven't seen a marked decrease. What can we say to the constituents in different pockets? And I'd also be curious to hear, you know, it was my understanding kind of that deer tend to be very territorial and tread the same, you know, same stretch of land, you know, so if we're not getting to a certain pocket of a neighborhood, then they won't see any marked improvement unless we get there. So what is our response to constituents who reach out to say that they're not seeing marked improvement, even though they know we've gotten 150 in the area?
I'm going to answer your question in 3 parts, Councilor. The first answer is to say that as you as councilors have heard, we have heard a range of feedback in the community from some neighborhoods that have told us they have immediately observed an impact, other neighborhoods that have told us, and you referenced one example on that border with the town of DeWitt, that they're seeing no impact and potentially feel as if there's been an increase in the population. So second part is what we will very much be seeking in the next public involvement phase is that kind of specific feedback from residents regarding what they observed and what they continue to observe in their areas. That will give us some guidance as we prioritize moving forward with the program. So I would urge you as counselors, as you hear that feedback, one answer is, which I think is something you instinctively let people know, is that we do know this is a long-term process, but we also know it only works if we get public involvement, and we would encourage residents to share their experiences either by attending public meetings that occur, or, Counselor, they are encouraged to contact either the Parks Department or the Mayor's office to provide us specific information. That will help us in our future planning. The third part of the question was regarding the behaviors of deer. And I'm going to not try to answer that with my level of expertise, except to say that, Justin is on and might be able to offer some context about what he knows from experience about the behavior of deer and what happens in the long term in programs like this. Justin, could I put you on the spot for a short answer to that question?
Yes, currently a lot of the research that's been done out there in New York and other states has shown that deer in these extremely urban areas have small home ranges. So yeah, that does mean that they're going to be, stick to that area for the most part. And, that will, yes, when these areas show up and people call in with them, we'll want to take note, so we know where that is for future years and see if we can find a way to work there, so we can get access to those deer because they may not move to an area where we are doing work. But as like a lot of research, as they do more and more, we'll learn more. Deer is one of the most researched animals on the planet. I do know of some research that's being conducted right now where they just had a deer move 150 miles out of an urban area across the border into Canada. So, it totally left New York. And, we only know that because they had a GPS collar on it. So, we'll see as all that research data comes out. But as a rule, yeah, they have pretty small home ranges. Are going to stay to that pretty small area within that urban environment in the city.
Okay, thank you guys for that response. We'll keep it looking as we go forward. To piggyback kind of off of Councilor Maroon's question about metrics, Greg, there are a number of metrics we could look at. There's obviously tick drags, deer vehicle. I don't know if there's been any impact. One of the things we discussed about the necessity for the deer, managing the population was the ecological damage that they can cause by, all the brush in an area, increasing flooding, throwing off ecological balance. I don't know if there's any indicators to measure that or anything, but I'm just wondering how many indicators are we looking at and develop as we go along a more, consolidated dashboard to show, it's great to see the 159, the number, to know the number of deer, but are we, could we develop a whole dashboard to, deer vehicle interaction, property damage, tick drags. I don't know who's collecting all those, but I know that perhaps different agencies are collecting them in different places. So I don't know if we could get one consolidated report that we get to the counselors and bring out to the community and bring out to the county legislators. I think that would be very helpful because this was obviously a very controversial one, but I think based on the multiple indicators that were showing that we needed to deal with this, it might be good to show multiple indicators that have shown that we've made progress on some of these multiple issues.
Counselor, we will involve the team that helps us with data projects like this at the Office of Accountability, Performance, and Innovation, and develop just that kind of a dashboard. I think that's an excellent idea and something that the council should receive as it reviews any future plan.
Yeah, because we are very excited to see the numbers, but I think there was multiple indicators. Okay, I think that about covers my questions. Does anybody else have questions or comments they'd like to make? Information we'd like to get out there? No?
One quick question. Why was the program cut short this winter again? I missed that one part.
Dave, the program was ended because of the measures for COVID-19 for the pause, where work was identified in government that was considered essential. And at that stage of the program, this project, USDA was determined it determined it needed to suspend its activities.
Okay, and one more thing. When I was covering this, I got pulled off it to do other things about 5 years ago. I tried to get stats from the city police department of deer car accidents, and at that time I was told the city police do not keep individual stats on deer motor vehicle accidents, that they're only deer animal accidents, and you have to go through every individual report to find out. Is that still the same?
Dave, Chief Schaaf is
Does
looking
not
at.
keep deer management, deer motor vehicle accident stats?
Chief Schaaf is tracking that information for us right now, but I don't have the answer to your question.
Okay. That's it.
Thanks, Dave.
And there were one last comment. I would just say something that we were discussing along the way, so I kind of know the answer, but just for those who are watching in the community, we had no issues with Justin. I don't know if you can comment to any challenges or obstacles, public safety. That's always the big concern when we roll out this kind of project. But to your knowledge, there was no real issues with concerns with public safety or obstacles that you faced regarding interactions with the public?
No, I would categorize everything as safe and effective. No incident.
Great. These guys are pros, baby.
Councilor Driscoll, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
So we have a totally transparent program that involves the city, county, and state, everybody working together to attack a problem. I'm like Dave, I got pulled off of the thing 5 years ago, and now I'm back. This is sort of unprecedented for me. I mean, unbelievable. Thanks to your leadership and Greg's and City Hall, and certainly former Councilor Maroon and everybody involved. It's unbelievable, really. Kudos.
Thank you, Councilor Hogan. It was great teamwork. The county's been great, the state's been great, the federal's been great. And Greg and the mayor's leadership on this. It's been a real great thing to see everyone pulling the rope in the same direction. So I hope we can keep this going on multiple issues.
It's like I awakened from a dream or something.
Joe, thank you for making sure you mentioned some of those other city departments. There have been many departments that have been involved. This has taken multiple, from Parks and Julie's team to police with Chief Schaaf, to the DPW's involvement, to law department.
And the community meetings too, so.
Yeah,
and community partnership, those that offered up their properties, neighbors and the groups, the people who worked on it. It really has just been great, seeing like a great sports team. Everything's moving in flow, and not a lot of complication. Everybody's playing in their lane, and it's been great to see. And I'm just really glad that with Justin's work, that there's a lot of variables that are beyond our control when you're dealing with interacting with nature. And I'm just great to see that everything went to plan and execution, and I'm really glad to see the results. So thanks to everyone who's been a partner on it. It's been great.
Counselor, at the risk of acting like I'm trying to get the last word, and I'm not. This is your meeting, sir. I just want to mention too that this point you've made about people involvement is the members of the advisory group who are on this call would say, please continue the involvement. They have advised us throughout that in their study of this issue, such programs cannot be successful in the long term without continued public input and involvement. And so I appreciate their advice and guidance throughout, and I repeat that call as we conclude today's meeting.
Yes, absolutely. And those constituents who reached out about concerns about their neighborhoods, please engage with us, let us know, get us feedback. It is very much, it's a community effort. So I appreciate that, Greg.
So Driscoll, I have one more, if I may.
Yep.
I actually had asked this of Courtney if she's on. Is there any update at all on the state legislation that threw a monkey wrench into this deer management from 3 years ago?
Oh, yep, I'm still here. Hello, everyone. No, Nader, I don't have any updates for you on that. Honestly, I'm probably not the best person to ask on the status, but I can tell you right now, we are revising the statewide deer management plan. It's a 10-year plan that we're working on, and we always have a piece where we have legislative issues that we would like to see addressed, and that's going to be included in that. So we'll be finalizing that here in the next couple of months, and then it'll be open to public comment. So everyone's, of course, welcome to read that and go through the public comment process. And so all I can say is, as deer biologists, we're pushing for it, but you know, we don't have much say in it. So I don't really have an update on it.
Oh, this is Dave Figueroa again. What is the main point that you want, Nader, the change you wanted? I guess it's what? It's got to be 500 feet away. You want it closer? Is that the issue?
That's one of them. Yes, there's a couple of issues relative to the DEC had guidelines initially in the permitting process, and they were, and I'm speaking out of context here, Courtney probably could jump into, the DEC and the regional offices were allowing permitting for culling operations, even though the guidelines didn't necessarily allow for it. Courtney, why don't you explain it so that I don't misrepresent the DEC in this?
Well, yeah, so it's state law, it's in environmental conservation law, that you can't, for instance, put bait within 300 feet of a road. You can't shoot within 500 feet of someone's house without permission. So there are some things that
And the vehicle too.
used to be allowed in the, well, yeah, right. So there's some things that used to be allowed in our deer management permits that our legal counsel went back and took a look at and saw it wasn't appropriate for us to do that anymore. So now it's a legislative issue, you know, so it's out of our hands as a, you know, biologist. And so we're just waiting for clarification on that, I guess. And the best information, of course, I have to send you up to legal affairs, Dave, and you know that probably, legislative affairs, to get our official take on that.
Thank you, Courtney.
Yep.
The last piece of that, Dave, it was that, so Justin and the USDA, they were able to do the management culling from a vehicle on permitted property, and that was ruled out as well. So that would limit the time. It affects the time that it takes for Justin's team to work, and it would also affect the results most likely, and probably then the costs tend to go up per deer because you're not culling as many deer as you want or need to. So that legislation got very political, in my opinion, and for what reasons, beyond me, but we've struggled with that. And as Greg pointed out earlier on, and Councilor Driscoll, as a result of that change by the DEC, it limits, very significantly limits the property availability to do the management that we want to have done, or municipalities would want to have done. But Courtney, also for whenever you publish that or your presentation or your plan, can you let us know that so we can read it and then be able to offer public comment, please?
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Driscoll.
Thank you, Auditor Maroon. So with that being said, does anyone else have any questions, or should we wrap this up?
Set, sir.
All right. Well, right at the hour mark. Perfect. We timed it. Boom. Right on the nose. All right. Thanks everybody for your input. Thanks for all the partnership from all the partners. Thanks to Greg for your presentation, and the mayor and your team. You guys have been great on this. And thanks to my fellow councilors for your questions. All right. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.
Good job, Councilor Driscoll.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you very much,
you.
Joe. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Yep. Bye-bye.